What's your creepy Airbnb story? Stayed at one in Rome. The door had 5 deadbolt locks on it. The windows were barred. Found out why. Randomly though the day people would try to open the door and look through the windows. Multiple times we would turn around and see people peeking through cracks between the curtains. We weren't even there a lot. Usually a quick meal or drop stuff off then back out to see the sights. Really nice place though. Were they trying to rob you or did they just think your place was an attraction? They were probably trying to rob them. Monsieur, Rome is really bad for robbing, pickpocketing, break-ins. It's even pretty common for hotel staff to be thieves, be paid off by people who they let into your room to steal your money, passport, etc. If there is one city in the world I'd tell you to be 10,000% sure you never ever leave any sort of valuable unsupervised, it's Rome. Barcelona is the same. Very high rates of muggings in the areas just outside of the main city center. We were driving on one of those roads before and 2 youngish guys on a moped pulled next to us at a red light and signaled that our back tire was flat. We pulled up at the next set of lights and parked under a street light and went to change tires. It had a long slit along the tire wall. We were told later that they ride up behind cars they wanted to hijack and stab the tires so the car is forced to pull over. And they hijack them at knife point. Luckily for us we pulled under a well-lit area. A lot of the road was unlit and dark, and a policer happened to drive up and sit at the lights we parked next to, and also circled back a couple of minutes later, and that was enough of a deterrent, I guess, cause the left after riding by a couple times. My sister and I were staying in a cute little detached house in a wealthy part of San Diego. It was right by the beach, but the house was super hippie and relaxed. The man who lived there was out of town, so some of his stuff was out. He was literally making his own kombucha. He had a bathroom attached to his little house that had a door that led to outside. He shared this bathroom with a tenant in another house who didn't have one. Around 4 a.m. she comes home drunk, goes into the bathroom, and starting banging on the door to our room viciously. She's screaming about how he stole her phone yesterday. This man has been out of town for a week. It was scary to wake up to in the middle of the night. But our stay was still great. I was traveling solo in Prague, and I loved my Airbnb apartment. It was the only time I've used a monsieur as I was going into the apartment. This old Czech guy starts yelling at me in Czech. I say sorry, I don't speak Czech, and I go up the stairs. He follows me but heads up another flight. I didn't go into the apartment until he was out of sight. 10 minutes later the doorbell rings, and I look out the peephole and it's the guy. I obviously don't open the door, but my heart was beating so hard. He leaves after a few minutes. I talked to the host about it and he came over right away to calm me down and assure me he was great. The guy never showed up again. Sorry it happened to you here. There's a growing resentment towards Airbnb in Prague, since many companies basically bought almost whole houses blocks for this use. And more people live in houses with a majority of basically party flats. Since booze is so cheap here, many tourists are stag parties and stuff like this, which makes them become basically unlivable. Drunk people at all times of the day harassing your small kids in the common area or trying to get into your flat because they confuse the floor. The discussion about regulations is just starting and people are getting really fed up with the whole business. And I guess old guys are cranky and confrontational everywhere. And the logic, "I'll just speak my language louder so you must understand," is pretty universal as well. Hope you had a good time otherwise. A couple years ago, my friend and I, 18-19 Seth, were traveling in the southeast USA because we were on spring break. The Airbnb we rented for the night turned out to be a couch in this guy's front room. Monsieur, in the middle of the night, these 2 people come in through the front door, drunk as hell, banging about, cursing, just overall being loud and obnoxious. They were not our Airbnb host. and start talking in front of our bed. I was awake, as was my friend, but we were unsure of what they were doing or what they would do. So we didn't move. They left the house and came back a couple of times, creeping us out the entire time. And we didn't find out until the next morning that our host had been renting one of his guest rooms in the back of the house to the monsieur. Also, one of them ended up shitting on top of the toilet seat in the middle of the night. We got a full refund. Literal shit show. I got to an Airbnb in bumfuck nowhere somewhere Kansas at about midnight. The Airbnb was $12 for a night. The property was a quaint little house on some farmland, and I had passed the nearest house about a half a mile down the road. The host was already asleep when I got there, so I let myself in and made my way to the couch where I was supposed to sleep. It was eerily quiet and pitch black outside, and I was already nervous, so I couldn't get to sleep. The living room was decorated with all kinds of random artifacts and treasures. I was looking around and taking everything in. There were cool rocks and souvenirs. But most curiously, there were weird religious objects and books with cultish symbolism. I googled a word I saw on a tapestry, which turned out to be the name of the religion the host followed. The religion revolves around UFOs. The Bible they follow is basically just a categorization of hundreds of types of spaceships. I was a bit on edge after reading that, but after much research, I concluded that it wasn't a murderous death cult, just super weird. I also nosily read through a journal that was just sitting on a coffee table, where the host had written things about her travels. One entry was about how she traveled to Peru and saw a spaceship. She wrote about how she'd never seen one that close before. It was all very strange, but I eventually got to sleep regardless. When I woke up in the morning, the host made me coffee and unprompted began telling me about her religion, among other conspiracies, like the government being able to control tornadoes. She was very kind and not overbearing, just eager to tell someone her truth. We talked for an hour or so before I got back on the road, and she sent me away with a bunch of stuff to research in an Airbnb magazine. Best Airbnb I've stayed at. Close second would be the Gay Nudist Hostel in Memphis. Okay, I'm going to need more information about the Memphis one. Not sure if it's creepy exactly, but it was definitely off-putting. A few years ago, some friends and I rented an Airbnb flat in London for a convention. We'd been corresponding with the owner, who had told us that she would meet us in front of the building to give us the keys and show us around. We messaged her when we got to London, and got a message back confirming the building address and flat number, and telling us the keys were in a lockbox on the front of the building. Weird, but fine. When we got to the building, there was no lockbox, so we messaged her again. Got a message back saying something like, "Oops, wrong flat, on my way," which was weird considering she'd confirmed the address in the same message. We waited 30 minutes and then messaged her again, asking how much longer she'd be. It was around 10 p.m. and raining, and we were all tired. She messaged back about 10 minutes later that she was sending someone else, and to wait inside the building, which we couldn't, because the door was only accessible by key buzzer. At around 11 p.m., a car pulled up with a guy in it, who yelled out the window, "Keys?" Quote, one of my friends went over and the guy just handed him a set of keys, with a tag on it that said the flat number we'd been told. He didn't ask our names, or for ID or even identify himself, just handed over the keys and drove off. It was at this point that my other friend suggested we should just bite the bullet and go see if we could get a hotel room, because this was kinda sketchy. But as we were all so tired, we decided to just see if we could get into the flat, and if it was the one in the pictures, we'd stay at least that night. It was super nice, actually, so we stayed. We messaged the owner a few times during our stay, but didn't get a response until the night we were due to leave. when we just got told to leave the keys on the kitchen table and pull the door shut behind us. No reply to any of our questions about anything else. Weird experience. If it makes you feel better. I've had very similar experiences. Some hosts just aren't great communicators, especially when they operate multiple Airbnbs at once. I've noticed. I've had one where the keys were hidden in a flower pot. Several sets of keys to multiple apartments. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.